Before we get started, I just want to do a quick sound check. We have two panelists today. The first is Lauralee Barbaria, Associate Director at the Environmental Finance Center West. Lauralee, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Great, Lauralee, we can hear you loud and clear. And also joining us on the line today is Sarah Diefendorf, Executive Director at Environmental Finance Center West. Sarah, are you there?
I sure am.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. We can hear you as well.
Great.
Okay, Lauralee, I'm going to turn the program over to you at this time.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad that you're here on the call. I'd like to start off with a question. Have you ever attended a conference or a meeting where there was just a bunch of terrible presentations? All of the presentations were hundreds and hundreds of slides. If the answer is yes, then you may have suffered from a dilemma called death by PowerPoint. I'm hopeful that today we'll be able to give you some ideas on ways you can prevent death by PowerPoint and engage your audiences so they help you get the results you want. To start off, I'd like to say welcome to the people who are with us today on the call. I know we have registered people from Hawaii. Looks like we have people from all over the United States here. And we have some people from Alaska on our call today, so thank you for being there. In order to better know who's on the call, we have a couple quick surveys or polls. Lisa, if you wouldn't mind doing the first one for me, please, so we can understand who's on the call.
Sure, here it comes.
Is it up, Lisa?
Yes, the poll is up. So the first question is, for water systems and organizations, how many customers do you serve? And please select one of the following, either 10,000 or fewer, or more than 10,000. And we've got about 50% of our attendees have responded so far. So I'm going to give it another 10 seconds or so. Okay, thank you very much. And it looks like 81% of our attendees today are representing water systems or organizations with fewer than 10,000 people. 19% serve more than 10,000.
Great. And just to gather one more piece of information, would you please put up the second poll?
Okay. This question pertains to presentations that you give as leaders. Do you give presentations to your boss and team, your board, a government group, customers or constituents, or you really don't give presentations? Our attendees are logging in their responses now, Lauralee. We've got 66% right now, and I'm going to give it another 10 seconds. Okay, thank you everyone for providing your responses. It looks like most people give presentations to their customers or constituents, and that represents 35% of the responses we got. The next highest response was that people give presentations to their board, and that was 26% of the responses. And then we've got a pretty even spread between government groups and boss and team, and then only 9% said they really don't give presentations at all.
Great, thank you. We've got a nice variety of people on the line. So let's get started here. Maybe. Great. Do we see the agenda item in front of us there, Lisa?
Right now it's not full screen. There, now I see agenda full screen.
Great. Okay, so moving forward then, let's talk about what we're going to cover today. Today we've got three concepts that we'd like to share with you that we think are going to help with presentations. In the first section, We're going to cover techniques you can use to create charts and graphs, and hopefully to improve your audience understanding of technical or factual data. The second section is going to be where we'll share some steps you can take to get people to change what they have in their mind to an answer of yes in their head, because the reason you're doing presentations is to get people to do what you would like. And last but not least, the third session will provide a few examples of how to integrate videos, images, and story so that the listeners will remember what you want them to remember, and they'll have their minds open to the facts that you're going to be providing to them so you can get the actions that you want. Everybody has something that they want, and often the need to persuade others is necessary in order to get it. I'd like you to meet Eric. If you asked Eric what he needs to do his job better, he might say something like, "We need variable frequency drives to adjust pump speeds so we can increase efficiencies." Or then there's Bob, and Bob might say, "To comply with SIDWA requirements, we need a new storage tank." In both situations, these people use jargon to describe what they really wanted. But unless you're in the industry, it might not resonate with you if you are the decision maker. Basically, they couldn't tell a good story that fit their audience. I'd like you to look at this slide for a minute, the one that says "Not My Boundaries." Now look at this slide. I'll go back to the previous slide. When you've got a white background on the presentation, you'll notice that it actually frames your presentation. But if you take and use a black background, what you'll find is the boundaries disappear and your presentation becomes wider. This is especially helpful when you're doing a projection on a screen where the width of the screen is wider than your presentation. It actually makes the presentation look quite big and gives you more area to put information on the screen. The dark with the red background here draws your eye to the middle of the screen. You want to be able to manage where people are looking. So I've got an example here of a slide that I have used over the years. I was very proud of this slide. For those of you who have done PowerPoint through the years, you may recognize this template. With PowerPoint or Keynote, and by the way, I use both, two software packages, they give the option to have a theme. So in my case, I chose a theme with a blue swoosh on the bottom because I thought it looked cool. And I also have my logo up on the top, who I was working for at the time. I felt obligated to tell them what the title of the slide was, and then I have bullets and sub-bullets there along the left. And because I felt like I was doing something special, I put a picture on my slide. So this slide is the old version of how we suggest you do slides. Actually, with the exact same information, your next slide could look like this. I still have a picture on the right, but please notice the size of the picture. And by putting it up first, I've drawn your eye to the picture. And then I'm going to go ahead and go down the various bullets on the left. Frankly, you don't need a logo if they don't know who you are by this stage of the game. All it does is take up space. Our recommendation is you leave your logos off, unless you have a logo requirement from your organization, in which case you would put your logo on your title page and on your end page. As you're going through the slide, moving through the bullets, you don't need a bullet point to tell people that they are absolutely on bullets. Limited state funds and priorities. This slide is an example of a PowerPoint Excel spreadsheet that was exported to PowerPoint. In this case, the maker of this slide fell into the trap of what I call the logo and the background trap. They have at the top of the slide their logo. They used their theme, which took up some of what I call the real estate of the slide. They went ahead and gave you some maintenance expenditure numbers on the top. But it's very hard to read the information on the bottom of the slide. Because your brain can't read the information on the bottom, it's going to automatically take a look at the colors and it'll read from left to right. So it's trying to decipher what's on this particular slide. Another way that you could show this similar kind of information is to do this. This is the same information but clumped. Frankly, you don't need to show the people that are in the audience everything you've got on your Excel spreadsheet. You only want to have the key points that are necessary to get to yes. So in this case, what we did was we took the information from this slide. We took a look at what was happening on the slide. Please note, this is for just 1 year, the maintenance costs for unplanned and planned costs. And yet, because people can't see what's on the bottom, they could be assuming that actually what you're seeing is maintenance costs over time. So to get away from a slide that's confusing like this one, we suggest that you go ahead and pull out the details that you need, clump them together so that the salient or most important points are available for people to see. It's possible that the presenters could have put together a graph like this one. This particular graph was one that I pulled from the web that shows water main breaks by fiscal year. Or as it turns out, they could have done a graph like this one, which gives people an idea of what their aging infrastructure's components are and how many of them there are. In this case, it talks about miles of water. But there's another way that you can show information. You can clump it and have it paint the screen so that people see it going across from left to right, so that you can guide them through what you want them to see. So in this case, as this screen is painting from left to right, I as the presenter would talk about what's happening in Region 1 and why Region 1 happens to be spending money, budget money above the line. And why when you get to Region 4, they have to draw from the reserves or for debt to pay for unexpected outages and infrastructure upgrades. And so by doing your spreadsheets in a way that walks the user across the screen, it's more possible to highlight the things that are important for you and to pause and take questions in the middle. If people are wondering in the middle of a slide, if people are wondering in the middle of a graph, they'll stop listening to what you have to say and try and figure it out. So it's best to go ahead and give them the information that they need in a concise manner. There's all kinds of ways to talk about records and statistics. This is an example of a way you can give people information on heat. I picked heat because heat is something that is drought related, which is water related. In this case, I would show a map of the United States and I talk about the records tied, which are there in yellow. I pause because people need a chance to figure out where their state or where their city is on this map. Give them time to find themselves. You want them to engage themselves in the various documents that you're showing them. And then I would go ahead and talk about records that were broken. What we're doing here is we're giving people a chance to assimilate data in a way that they're used to seeing it. This could just as easily be done in a pie chart or a bar graph, but by using a different kind of graphic, it's possible to guide people where you want to have them go and have them realize this is their life and it's relevant to them. Imagine this. It could be that you have a map like this one of a number of, I think this is water breaks in a city. And in this case, it would be possible for people to literally figure out where their home is and where these water breaks have occurred in the last 5 years. And you could have these dots paint the screen exactly as I did on the U.S. map. The more real you make it to the people who are watching, the less it is factual and the more it's relevant to them. Let's talk about shovels. Let's pretend like this dialogue happens. One workman says to another one, the low-bid shovels just aren't any good. And in response, we want to go back to the other shovels. Well, the lower shovels are not always the lower cost. Let's look at the cost per shovel. If you're creating a graph, it's good to paint, a table, it's good to paint across the screen just as we did with the other Excel spreadsheet graphs. Then we can talk about the number of shovels and that are used per year. And then we come up with a total cost per year, and yes, indeed, it looks like those new shovels are cheaper than the old shovels. Go ahead and use a graphic to highlight the thing that you want people's eyes to gravitate to when you have a chart. It's especially important when you have a chart that's quite busy, because sometimes people see so many numbers. About a third of a room will love numbers, a third of the room will hate numbers, and a third of the room only learns by images. So by doing a chart this way, you're actually giving the three kinds of people that are in the audience the chance to cue in on the things that you want in the learning style that works best for them. If you take a more systemic view of shovels, you can walk them again through the cost per shovel and the number of shovels per year, the total cost per year. But in a systemic view, actually there's more things to look at when it comes to the dollars. So our suggestion is that when you have a simple answer, like the $690 versus the $704 as part of the solution, you give a more systemic look so that you're looking at other variables that are included. In this case, we had the operator injuries due to workers' comp and lost time. What if you're presenting to the board? Remember, it's important to understand your audience and what they know about your subject matter. If you've got a graph, or in this case a chart, that's busy like this one, take your time, if you're going to use a chart, and walk them through the left axis and walk them across the top so they know what's being covered. In this case, we're talking about the probability of failure. And they talk about the various well names on the left side. And these are the various criteria across the top that would help them determine what the criteria is for failure. So in the case, they talk about age, clogging, regs, the aesthetics of their water, and the well depth, and they come up with a total score. So you walk your audience through this particular graph. Then you get to the next table, which is the consequence of failure. So now you want to know, so if it fails, what are going to be the impact on my customers? In this case, you would again walk them through the left axis, and you walk them through the top axis, but you talk about the number of customers, the replacement cost, whether or not they're critical, and you'd include your redundancy factor for a total score. It's a lot of information, and if you walk them through these two tables, undoubtedly you would have a third table. And the third table would have the information that's consolidated, a summary. And in this case, you have the first chart data in the first column, which is the probability of failure, and you have the second chart of data, which is consequence of failure, with a total score, if you include redundancy, on the right. And then you would talk about which things are the most critical and which are not. So this is one way you can walk people through. I've seen it done this way many times. Or you could use a different technique that looks sort of like this. In the chart you see in front of you, the central has a number of 140 and the west side has a number of 117. So they are probably the highest risk assets. What if you show the exact same information with just this kind of chart? So your consequence of failure is on the left and your probability of failure are on the bottom. And you go ahead and plot your bubbles as best you can in these quadrants. The higher the probability of failure, the further right you go. And the bigger the consequences of your failure, the farther up you go. It's a quick look. It prevents you from having to go through all of those graphs and charts previously. And I suggest that it's a way that you can quickly get your point across and move on and not get mired in the details. So basically what we want to say here is that facts are important. You must have your facts in order to make your case. But frankly, people are not inspired to act by facts alone. Story is what engages people, and it engages people on multiple levels. We need to be able to get beyond the, gee, that was interesting, which is the mindset people have when they get facts. They want to get them beyond, that was interesting, and not go back to what they were doing before, to a place where they remember what you say. This is a great quote from Andy Goodman, where I got quite a bit of my training. I'll read this one to you. Even if you have reams of evidence on your side, remember, numbers numb, jargon jars, and nobody ever marched on Washington because of a pie chart. So if you want to connect with your audience, you need to tell them a story about what's coming. The second piece of our agenda has to do with yes. So let's do this first. I would like to have people, I think it's time for the poll, please, Lisa.
Okay.
Are you there, Lisa?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just launching the poll.
Thanks.
Okay, so this poll question is, when preparing a presentation, the first thing you think about is who is the audience, the message and concepts to deliver, what you want listeners to do after the, sorry, there's a typo there, after the end of the presentation, the top 3 to 4 things you want them to remember, and what is important to the audience. Please provide your response. Okay, and everyone is actively clicking away, Laura Lee. We've got a very good response level at this point. 83% of our attendees have responded. Still climbing. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, thank you, everyone. And the results of this poll, most people think about who their audience is. That represents 39% of the responses we just got. We are pretty evenly distributed between the message and concepts to deliver and what you want listeners to do after the presentation. And then also, and that represents 24 to 22%. And it looks like only a couple people think about the top 3 to 4 things you want folks to remember and what is important to the audience, those representing 7% and 9% of the responses respectively.
Great, thank you. So when we ask this question of other groups, this is the kind of response we get. I assume you see the screen. What is first up in front of you, Lisa?
Yep, looks good.
Great. So when we ask this in front of other groups, we often get the answer messaging as the first thing that's required. If you answered messaging, then what is happening is you are thinking about what you want to convey as probably out of place, because if you start thinking about what your message is, you're already placing the initial focus on your material, not where it actually belongs, which is on the audience. Who's the audience is your first thing you should be thinking about. And then you want to try and decipher what's important to them. That's assuming that you know your audience. You do want to think about what the top 3 or 4 things are that you want them to remember, because people can only remember in 60 seconds worth of a presentation about 3 to 5 minutes worth of material. And then you have to know what it is you want them to do when they leave. Assuming you know who your audience is, you need to think about these things. You need to convince them why should they care, how will this improve their life, and what must you do. It's necessary for you to answer these questions before you can change what's over there in the brain, which are the stored ideas that we all come to a meeting with, to their readiness to hear new information and get to yes. My suggestion is when you're creating a presentation that you think of it as a bridge or taking a journey across a bridge. You think of A as what are they thinking and feeling when they enter the room? Are they hostile? Are they anxious? Are they ready? Are they bored? What you want them to think and feel when they leave? Do you want them to be energized, hopeful, afraid, ready to vote? And use the bridge as your journey across, with each arch being a concept. Remember, they can only remember 3 to 4 concepts as listeners. So you have to think of the top of each arc or arch here as a concept, and the material that you use to build to the top of each arch is the material that has your charts in it, it'll have your graphs in it, it'll have your story in it, and it'll have the other pieces of the puzzle to help put it together for them as an integrated package. You need to know what they know. Try and guess. What does your audience know? Are they familiar with your topic? Are they coming in with biases? One of the fastest ways you can lose your audience is to talk below their knowledge or talk outside of their job description. So the more homework you can do, the better. It's all about building. You want to build on what they know and what they believe, because if you're already resonating what's important to them, you're halfway there. I'd like to use this example. It's not water related. Actually, it has to do with carpooling. For anybody who lives in a place where you have to carpool, it takes 1 to 2, sometimes hours to get to your location. But people generally hate to carpool. So in this instance, if I was trying to change people's minds and how they feel about carpooling, I would try and think about what's important to the people who don't like carpooling. Carpooling generally tends to be women who have children, and often they're women who are working. If you are a mom on this call, I would submit, what is the thing that moms have the least of? And I hope the answer for many of you is time. So instead of talking about the reduction in carbon emissions by carpooling, how we're reducing time on the road by carpooling, instead we focused on things you can get back if you carpool in your life, which is time and which is the opportunity to visit with friends and to read. So we went for what people care about, in this instance for this audience, and then we substantiated it with facts. Another thing to be very aware of is, what do you think they know or believe that you need to overcome? And be ready, because there's always somebody in the audience that can ambush you. People may be ambushing you because they have biases that are historical, or they're unsympathetic, or they are in opposition to you and you know it going in. You can prepare your arguments and speak to their concerns before they even get there and take a meeting off track. So please keep this and take it to heart. Facts do not have the power to change someone's story. Your goal is to introduce a new story that will let the facts in. So let's talk about how to use story. It's an effective tool. It's used by organizations all around the world and the country. Let's start with how our brain works. We process images 60,000 times faster than words. We recall information that's presented as images 6 times more easily than text. So what this physiological thing means to you is, whatever you do, make sure you show them. If you're going to use facts in your presentation, and you must have facts or you lose credibility, there are many ways to share it with people so that you're resonating with what's in their minds and also you're resonating what's in their hearts. This is an example of an image. This is an image about people and outages during the Hurricane Sandy. This is one way to show a statistic. If you take a look at that picture and see New York in the dark, you can't help but feel it in your gut. Over 8.4 million people are sitting in the dark. You could back that up with a graph that shows the number of users that were out by area. But I would start with a picture that gets people right there into where you want them to be in their hearts. If you want to talk about your staff and how they're there 24/7, rain or shine, go ahead and get a picture that shows your staff down there in the trenches. And then give them an Excel spreadsheet that gives them a flavor for your staffing costs, your staffing requirements, and your staffing needs. If you need to talk about heat, because heat is imperative, drought is imperative to water conservation, if that's your agenda, give them a picture that takes them right to where the heat is. And as a side note, it's important if you can to go ahead and put somewhere on the slide when you have an image where the image is. It's important because if people don't know where it is, they've stopped listening to you and they're busy looking at the presentation and at that picture trying to figure out where it is. Go ahead and tell them either in writing or in words so that you capture their attention back. There's nothing more personal than a quote. So what you want to do is add in a quote that's from somebody in your area or somebody around you when you're putting together a presentation that's relevant to your topic. In this instance, this is where I live. I live in a place in California, and we are definitely drought-ridden. So this is Folsom Lake in 2011. And if I was giving this presentation to people in my area, I would then show them this. This is Folsom Lake this January, 17% of snowpack. So what we've done is taken people out of statistics and graphs and brought them right home to where it is near and dear to their heart. Don't forget to use videos. Isn't that amazing? What you're seeing here is a dust storm in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And dust storms are not an unusual occurrence there, but dust storms are becoming more and more frequent and are just another consequence of the drought that we're facing. So I would use video because young people, for one, expect video, and old people like me enjoy video because it helps put things together for us that are concepts that are difficult to think through. For those of you that are living in areas that aren't worried about drought but are worried about flood, use an image and then talk about flood. If you want to talk about what people's habits are so that they can understand what they're tossing into our toilets and water systems are affecting our ability to do our jobs, give them a picture. And in this instance, we took off the person's head, but it's important that you use your own staff to personalize what people are seeing. Otherwise, you're invisible often, and water is invisible. If you need to talk about infrastructure, the magnitude of infrastructure, or the age of your infrastructure, get down into the trenches, take advantage of any opportunity where you have outages, and take advantage of any opportunity where you have successes. Catch them on film. It's the best way to move people forward. This is an example of a concept that some people don't know. An amazing number of people don't realize that water is finite. This is an example of a video used to carry somebody through the hydrological cycle, starting with the evaporation, of course. and then we're moving to precipitation with the water returning to the sea. When you're talking to youngsters and oldsters, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's a thing that they're going to remember. Let's talk about this. This is the chart used by a municipality. They were presenting to a governing body. The purpose of the chart, if you look at it, is a little bit obscure, but after a little bit of analysis and walking people through it, they would probably be trying to get their audience to understand that their maintenance costs and dollars have been kept static on the top line, and yet the deferred maintenance and the backlog of work that needs to be done is below the line, and it's pay now or pay later. This is what they were going to use as a chart to try and get people to understand why they needed a rate change. I'm not convinced that this would be compelling enough for a rate change, even with a lot of dialogue and many, many more charts and graphs. What if they were to do something like this? Our infrastructure is aging. The situation will continue to get worse without additional funding. The arteries and veins of our water system are getting clogged. Sometimes they burst with the pressure. When infrastructure fails, it impacts people. The people who care for us, the people who provide us water. It impacts our ability to get to work, all of our customers. It shuts down businesses and impacts the value of our homes. Water's not free. And then at this point, this is when you would bring in your charts to show them what it is you would like for your capital improvement program, why you would like to not defer maintenance, why you've thought through which components of your infrastructure are more critical than others, and you're going to ask them before they leave to consider voting for a rate case. So that's a sequence of multimedia. It's a sequence of adding story, making sure you resonate with people at their level, and then you throw in the various charts and graphs to make sure that they have the data that they need. And then, of course, you end with water's not free. Stories are an important component. They catch the memories of the past and use story to catch the hopes of the future. Stories do not have to be your own. You can use stories from the web. You can use stories from the newspaper. I use videos from YouTube. Sometimes we go out and take pictures. Feel free to use other people's stories, because of stories will make things real for people so that the numbers can get into their head and so that they'll remember what it is you want them to remember when they leave. Don't forget, presentation is a journey. There's only going to be 3 concepts that you want them to walk away with. You want to make sure at the arc of each one of these concepts, you use story, you use images, which are nothing more than story and pictures, and you use the facts that are necessary to give them the complete picture. You're actually pouring information into people's heads that there may not have been room for before until you opened up their hearts and minds by using images to make sure that your point gets across. If you have questions, this is me. You're more than welcome to send me information and questions about your projects that you're working on so we can help you think through what your story might be. And with that, Lisa, I'm ready for questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura Lee. That was excellent. At this time, I'm going to ask everybody to please type your questions into the question box in your control panel. And I'm also going to send you all over in the chat function a link to an evaluation on this webinar. And we ask that you please take a moment and let us know what you thought of this webinar. Your feedback is very important to us and will help us for future ones. And let's see here. I've got, let's see, Laura Jenkins has asked, will we be able to watch the webinar again afterwards? And she says, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Yes, you will definitely be able to watch the webinar again. We have recorded today's session, and it's going to be made available on the EFC Network website at efcnetwork.org. Jay Mashburn has asked, where can I go to learn more about this?
Oh, Lisa, that's a great question. I'd like to suggest that I provide you some resources so that people can see where they can learn about story, where they can learn about the techniques of graphing. I didn't go into any of the how-tos on how to create a graph, depending upon your software that you use and depending upon the age of your computers. It's not something I can do one-on-one, but there are a lot of forums out there that we can make available for people to see on how to do this kind of work and how to utilize storytelling.
Well, Lee, I would also add that we have another webinar coming up this Friday, and we'll be adding more information on how to give effective presentations and using imagery and that type of thing.
Yes, and you can go to the EFC Network website and register for Friday's webinar as well, and we definitely welcome and encourage you all to do that. Okay, I've got another question here. This question comes from Dorothy Young. Dorothy asks, why are some words capitalized when they wouldn't normally be in regular writing? I find it jarring. Is there a rule on this?
Ah, that's a great question, Dorothy. There's no rule. I have had people ask me that before. Consistency probably is the rule of thumb that makes the best sense, so hopefully I've been consistent. I like to use capitals because it makes people pause and read that word, and sometimes it actually adds a little bit of emphasis. It's strictly personal preference, and for those of you who are really sticklers for being consistent, you have my hat off to you, and please go forth.
I might add that Dorothy also says thanks and great presentation.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Okay, I've got one more question here. This question comes from Charles Belmore. Charles asks, how about the use of an outside expert or consultant?
I'd like to answer that with two thoughts. Sometimes people want an outside expert to come in because they want somebody else to take the arrows. And often that's the case because the inside talent already knows the answer, but they have found that their leadership is not interested in listening, or they don't think they have the credibility of an outside source. So depending upon your audience and your reason for bringing in the consultant, if the reason is to give credibility to what you already know to be true, then bringing in a consultant sometimes will break the logjam so that then the things that you already know that are right and the homework that you've already done can be heard. Remember, it's about changing the story in somebody's head. And if the story they have in their head is nothing you say is going to make them change their mind, then sometimes a consultant is a valuable tool. My only word of warning is that if you bring in a consultant, you don't want the consultant to be responsible for the implementation and answer if you can help it, because you're the ones left with the ball when the consultant leaves.
Okay, great. Thank you. Folks, you can continue to type your questions in. I don't see any at this time. But before we go ahead and end, there are just two more poll questions that we'd like to ask you. They are for our one-on-one technical assistance that the Environmental Finance Center Network can provide. So I'm going to go ahead and put this poll question up, the first one. So this first one, we're asking, for folks that are serving 10,000 or fewer people, do you want one-on-one help with, and you can select one or more of the following: developing a budget for your water system, calculating key financial indicators, how future capital projects will impact your revenue needs, setting rates, or determining affordable rates for your customers. So if you'd like one-on-one help with any of those, please just provide your response here, and we will follow up with you after our webinar. Okay, thank you very much. There's one more question, very similar to the last. Again, for folks serving 10,000 or fewer people, just select if you'd like one-on-one help with creating an asset management inventory, understanding your system's water loss, managing the energy use of your system, or understanding available loan and grant programs.
Lisa, and of course they're welcome to email me if they have questions about messaging and their presentations.
Absolutely. I'm going to give this a few more seconds here. Okay, and thank you to everyone who provided their response to our poll. Again, Laura Lee Barbaria's contact information is up on your screen right now, and as she just mentioned, you're more than welcome to reach out to her if you have any follow-up questions. I don't see any additional questions in my control panel here. So I just want to remind everyone to stay tuned about future Environmental Finance Center Network webinars. We do have one coming up this Wednesday on water system partnerships and regionalization, and also on, that will be Wednesday, March 12th. I read the wrong one. I apologize. So this Wednesday will be water loss reduction for small water systems, and then Friday we do have Leadership Part 2, effective messaging. So we do welcome you to visit our website and register there. And thank you very much for joining us. Laura Lee, do you have any closing words?
Nope. Thank you all for being here, and good luck with all that you do.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 Answer if you can help it, because you're the ones left with the ball when the consultant leaves.
Okay, great. Thank you. Folks, you can continue to type your questions in. I don't see any at this time. But before we go ahead and end, there are just two more poll questions that we'd like to ask you. They are for our one-on-one technical assistance that the Environmental Finance Center Network can provide. So I'm going to go ahead and put this poll question up, the first one. So this first one, we're asking, for folks that are serving 10,000 or fewer people, do you want one-on-one help with, and you can select one or more of the following: developing a budget for your water system, calculating key financial indicators, how future capital projects will impact your revenue needs, setting rates, or determining affordable rates for your customers. So if you'd like one-on-one help with any of those, please just provide your response here, and we will follow up with you after our webinar. Okay. Thank you very much. There's one more question, very similar to the last. Again, for folks serving 10,000 or fewer people, just select if you'd like one-on-one help with creating an asset management inventory, understanding your system's water loss, managing the energy use of your system, or understanding available loan and grant programs.
Lisa, and of course they're welcome to email me if they have questions about messaging and their presentations.
Absolutely. I'm going to give this a few more seconds here. Okay, and thank you to everyone who provided their response to our poll. Again, Laura Lee Barbaria's contact information is up on your screen right now, and as she just mentioned, you're more than welcome to reach out to her if you have any follow-up questions. I don't see any additional questions in my control panel here. So I just want to remind everyone to stay tuned about future Environmental Finance Center Network webinars. We do have one coming up this Wednesday on water system partnerships and regionalization, and also on, that will be Wednesday, March 12th. I read the wrong one. I apologize. So this Wednesday will be water loss reduction for small water systems, and then Friday we do have Leadership Part 2, effective messaging. So we do welcome you to visit our website and register there. And thank you very much for joining us. Laura Lee, do you have any closing words?
Nope. Thank you all for being here, and good luck with all that you do.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.